Located off of Interstate 75 in Lima, Ohio, U.S. Plastic manufactures and distributes some 25,000 plastic and safety items, serves over 85,000 clients, and operates all of this in a 5-acre factory.
Approximately 75% of the population of the United States is within 650 miles of Lima. 650 miles of Lima reaches New York City, it reaches Atlanta, Chicago, Detroit, Minneapolis, St. Louis. It's a very strategic location in order to be able to reach this large percent of the population from a fairly central location. We are a mail order company.
It's basically an order fulfillment master distributorship of all types of industrial plastics.
It used to be that I think about everybody thought the only type of plastic there was the plastic duck in the kid's bathtub, you know. But there's such a wide variety of plastics today, and all of them are unique for their particular applications.
Since their founding, U.S. Plastic has seen significant growth and success.
Today, do more business in one day than we did in a year at that time.
But this success is not what sets them apart.
We're a different company than most companies. We're similar in that we want to make as much money as we possibly can, but the purpose is totally different.
For years, people have been coming by the busload to find out more about the company and what makes it different. Most aren't even interested in plastic. They're interested in the company founder, Stanley Tam.
People come from all over the world to see him and to talk to him.
Stanley has always promoted that God owns my business, and this has been a great deal of curiosity.
The story of Stanley Tam and United States Plastic is an unusual one. It's the story of an all-too-ordinary man with a consuming drive to succeed.
A long time ago, I came to the conclusion that if I didn't want to be a Christian for any other reason, I'd like to be a Christian because of the people I meet. I've met some of the most unusual people the world has to offer, and always came away with my own personal life enriched.
The first time I met Stanley Tam, we went to his office, and right when I started looking around the office, because I didn't know him that well, and I started realizing I'm a gnat. Started seeing keys to cities, pictures with people, being in books. Not his own book, but being in other books, people quoting him.
And the people that impress you the most are the people that know God. Because when people know God, something happens to them that opens them up and makes them a channel through which the very grace of God that is in the heart of God flows through them and comes into you, and you walk away with the benefits.
If I hadn't met Stanley Tam, I wouldn't be here today. The track I was taking, the path I was taking in life, I'd be going, I'm sure.
Most anywhere you go. I travel a lot, speak a lot. When you talk about the man who wrote the book and gave his business to God, you can hardly go anywhere that people haven't heard about this unusual man who was willing to give it all to God.
At a very young age, Stanley knew what he wanted to become.
Stanley started out with a different goal than he ended up with. His goal was to get rich, same as any other person who starts a business. The goal is to make as much money as possible, and that was his.
By 1936, after several failed get-rich-quick schemes, Stanley landed a solid job as the manager of a local filling station. He was 20 years old.
We had to get our reports in to Toledo on the last day, and I was working on my reports when my girlfriend came along, and she coaxed me to go to a party, and I decided I could get them in a day late. That was in my own mind, but the company didn't think the same thing, and when I got them in late, they fired me. But it was a good thing, because had I not been fired from the Sunoco filling station, I would have never gone into business.
About this same time, Stanley came across what he thought would be the idea of a lifetime.
My father, he was talking to me about the prospects of reclaiming silver from photographic solutions. And he was telling me that Eastman Kodak Company alone was using over 20 tons of silver every week to make photographic film. When a photographer would develop his negatives, 80% of the silver would be wasted. So there was something like 16 tons of silver going down the drain every week.
Stanley did some research, made a few calculations, and came to a conclusion.
I figured there's something like $300,000 worth of silver was going down the drain every week. That would be enough to satisfy me. So I started out to become rich.
Dreaming of wealth was one thing, but obtaining it was something totally different. Stanley struggled to look past his difficult circumstances.
He grew up at a very difficult time in the history of our country. It was during the Depression.
He was the only male in his family. He has 2 sisters. And I think the Depression affected him, not having anything.
He never had the opportunity to get a college education. He's a very intelligent person and would have done well in school, but it just wasn't available at that time.
He was capable of thinking way beyond where most of the rest of us were, and oftentimes he would help us at that point.
I was a freshman in high school when the crash came. The banks closed, everybody lost their jobs. My mother realized that we're going to lose the farm. And she'd come from a wealthy family, and my dad had talked her into use her money to buy the farm with. But we still had a mortgage on it. And she realized she was going to lose her money. And she didn't like that very much. And she used to take it out on my dad. They fought quite a bit. And some nights I would go and sleep in a corn shock, or I had a pet pig, I'd go out and sleep with my pet pig.
These sleepless nights gave Stanley the chance to dream about one day becoming successful.
And I think he's always just kind of been a good dreamer.
As Stanley considered this idea of silver reclamation, he wondered if it was the idea of a lifetime or just another failure waiting to happen.
He had heard that there was a method of reclaiming this silver from the photographic industry, and he set about to find out how to do that and to implement it.
He bought the rights to the silver recovery business.
The method was found in a simple silver collector developed by an inventor in Cleveland, Ohio. After obtaining the rights to build and sell these silver collectors, Stanley purchased the necessary materials with some money that his dad gave him.
My grandpa, he was a good carpenter, and so he made my silver collectors for me.
The collector was simple. It was placed in the developing chemicals at a photography studio. The collector would generate a small electric current that caused wasted silver to attract to the collector. After several months, the contraption would be full of silver. He could then pick up the contraption, smelt and refine the silver, and sell it for quite a profit. It was easy money, or so he thought.
And the guy that sold those rights to him, that patent to him, didn't tell him.
4 other companies had organized in the United States to reclaim silver, and they had all gone broke. Had I known it, I wouldn't have tried it, because I was number 5.
He chose the name States Smelting and Refining Company and was on his way.
He started out making calls on photographers and X-ray departments and hospitals.
I had a lot of difficulties because people knew that there was silver collectors, but they never succeeded. They would make fun of me when I'd come. They'd say, "Hi-ho, silver."